Today we explore the tragic case of 22-year-old Gabby Petito, known to her friends and family as Gabby. This story takes us across the American West, from New York to Wyoming, following the path of a young couple's dream road trip that ended in murder. We'll visit the places where Gabby lived, traveled, and ultimately lost her life in the remote wilderness of Wyoming's Bridger-Teton National Forest. This is a story about love turned dangerous, warning signs missed, and a case that captured the attention of millions of people around the world. The locations in this story stretch from Gabby's hometown of Blue Point, New York, through Moab, Utah, where police encountered the couple during a domestic dispute, and finally to Spread Creek in Wyoming's vast wilderness, where searchers discovered her remains in September 2021. The Bridger-Teton National Forest spans over 3 million acres of rugged Wyoming wilderness, making it one of the largest national forests in the United States. Created through a series of presidential orders beginning with President Cleveland in 1897, this vast landscape has drawn explorers, trappers, and adventurers for over a century. The forest combines the original Teton Forest Reserve with the Bridger National Forest, officially joined together in 1973. For over 11,000 years, Native American tribes called this region home, hunting and living among the towering peaks and alpine meadows. The area attracted fur trappers in the early 1800s, including famous mountain men like Jim Bridger and John Colter. Today, the forest protects pristine watersheds, abundant wildlife, and some of the most remote wilderness areas in the lower 48 states. It's home to grizzly bears, wolves, elk, and countless other species. The Spread Creek area where Gabby was found sits within this vast wilderness, a dispersed camping area popular with van life travelers and those seeking solitude in nature's embrace. Gabby Petito grew up in Blue Point, New York, a small community on Long Island. She was born on March 19, 1999, and was the oldest of 7 children in a blended family. Those who knew her described a creative, free-spirited young woman with dreams of building something bigger than herself. She had 6 younger siblings and half-siblings who looked up to her. As a teenager, she appeared in a music video created to raise awareness about gun violence after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, showing her early interest in making a difference in the world. During high school at Bayport Blue Point High School, Gabby met Brian Christopher Laundrie. They began dating when she was 20 years old, in 2019. By that time, Brian had already graduated and was working various jobs. Friends and family noticed that Gabby was quiet about the relationship at first. When she finally started talking about Brian, it was clear they were already serious about each other. About 9 months after they started dating, the couple made a big decision. They would leave New York and move to Florida to be closer to Brian's family. Gabby packed up her life on Long Island and headed south to Northport, Florida. At first, things seemed to go well. Gabby got along with Brian's mother, Roberta Laundrie. But as time passed, some family members noticed that Roberta seemed to grow colder toward her son's girlfriend. After dating for a year and 3 months, Brian proposed to Gabby. The proposal wasn't traditional, there was no ring. But at the moment Brian asked her to marry him, a firefly landed on Gabby's finger. The couple took this as a sign, a good omen for their future together. Gabby was thrilled and shared the news on social media, posting about their engagement with joy and excitement. Instead of planning a wedding right away, Gabby and Brian decided they wanted to do something different. They would buy a van and travel across the country together. It seemed like the perfect adventure for a young couple in love, a way to see America while building their relationship and maybe even starting a business together. Gabby had always been interested in social media and creating content. She dreamed of building a lifestyle blog and maybe even starting a business around travel and adventure. The idea of van life appealed to her creative spirit. She could document their travels, share beautiful photos, and maybe inspire others to chase their own dreams. They bought a white Ford Transit van and spent time converting it into their mobile home. Gabby was excited about the project and shared updates on social media. She created a YouTube channel called Nomadic Static and an Instagram account where she would document their journey. Her goal was to grow these platforms and possibly turn their travel adventure into a career. Brian seemed supportive of Gabby's dreams, at least at first. He helped with the van conversion and appeared in some of her social media posts. But friends would later say that Brian sometimes seemed jealous of the attention Gabby received online. He didn't always seem comfortable with her desire to build a following and create content. The couple planned their trip carefully. They would travel for 4 months, visiting national parks across the western United States. Their route would take them through Kansas, Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. Gabby was particularly excited about visiting places like Arches National Park and Bridger-Teton National Park. She had researched the best spots for photos and was looking forward to sharing their adventure with her growing online audience. On July 2, 2021, Gabby and Brian left Blue Point, New York, in their converted van. Gabby's family was excited for her. This seemed like the trip of a lifetime for a young woman who loved adventure and creativity. Her parents, Joe Petito and Nicole Schmidt, supported her dreams and were happy to see her pursuing something she was passionate about. The first few weeks of the trip seemed to go well. Gabby posted regularly on Instagram, sharing beautiful photos from their journey. On July 4, she posted a photo from Kansas, smiling and happy. She was keeping her promise to stay in touch with her family and document their adventure. They traveled through Colorado, taking in the mountain scenery and exploring different areas. Gabby's post showed a young woman living her dream. She and Brian appeared happy together in the photos and videos she shared. Her YouTube channel began to gain some attention, and she was excited about the possibilities for growing her platform. But behind the carefully curated social media posts, things may not have been as perfect as they appeared. Friends and family would later say that Brian could be controlling and jealous. There were signs that their relationship had challenges, but Gabby kept most of these problems private. As July turned into August, their journey continued into Utah. This was where the dream trip would begin to show serious cracks. On August 12, 2021, the couple was driving through Utah when their van was spotted by police officers near Arches National Park. A witness had called 911 to report what looked like a domestic violence incident. The caller said they saw a man slap a woman and then try to lock her out of their van. When officers pulled him over, they found Gabby crying uncontrollably. She was visibly upset, struggling to catch her breath and speak clearly. Brian, on the other hand, seemed much calmer. He had visible scratches on his face and arms. The police body camera footage from this stop would later become crucial evidence in understanding what was happening between Gabby and Brian. In the video, Gabby tells officers that she had been arguing with Brian about her cleaning habits. She said she had obsessive-compulsive tendencies and that sometimes her need to clean and organize things frustrated Brian. "I was apologizing to him and saying, 'I'm sorry that I'm so mean,'" Gabby told the officers. "Because sometimes I have OCD and sometimes I can get really frustrated." Gabby took responsibility for the physical altercation, telling police that she had slapped Brian. She said she was the primary aggressor and didn't want him to get in trouble. This is actually common in domestic violence situations. Victims often blame themselves or minimize their partner's behavior to protect them. The officers made a decision that would later be heavily criticized. Instead of treating this as a domestic violence incident, they characterized it as a mental health crisis. They separated the couple for the night, sending Brian to a hotel and letting Gabby stay in the van. Neither was arrested, and no charges were filed. Domestic violence experts would later point out that this encounter showed classic signs of an abusive relationship. The victim was highly emotional and taking blame, while the abuser appeared calm and collected. The physical evidence, scratches on Brian's face and arms, could have been defensive wounds from Gabby trying to protect herself. After the police encounter in Moab, the couple continued their journey. They spent some time in Salt Lake City and then headed toward Wyoming. Gabby continued to post on social media, but her family would later say they noticed subtle changes in her posts and messages. On August 21, Gabby had her last FaceTime call with her father. She seemed happy during the call and talked about their travels. This would be the last time her family would see her alive on video. On August 25, Gabby made her final post on Instagram. The photo showed her standing in front of a colorful mural, but something was different about this post. The caption was shorter than usual, and the photo quality wasn't up to her usual standards. Her family later said this post didn't seem like something Gabby would have created herself. On August 27, Gabby's mother Nicole received a text message from her daughter's phone. The message read, "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting his voicemails and missed calls." Stan was Gabby's grandfather, but her mother immediately knew something was wrong. Gabby never called her grandfather by his first name, she always called him Grandpa. This message was completely out of character. 2 days later, on August 30th, another text arrived from Gabby's phone: no service in Yosemite. But Gabby wasn't supposed to be in Yosemite. She was supposed to be in Wyoming. Her family knew this message couldn't have come from Gabby. These text messages were actually sent by Brian after Gabby was already dead. He was using her phone to try to make it seem like she was still alive, buying himself time to get back to Florida. On September 1, 2021, Brian Laundrie drove Gabby's van back to his parents' house in Northport, Florida. He arrived alone. He didn't contact Gabby's family to let them know what had happened or where she was. He simply went home and said nothing. For 10 days, Brian stayed at his parents' house while Gabby's family desperately tried to find out what had happened to their daughter. They called, they texted, they tried everything they could think of to get information from Brian or his family. But the Laundries remained completely silent. This silence was incredibly frustrating and suspicious to Gabby's family. Here was the last person to see their daughter alive, and he wasn't talking. His family wasn't helping either. They hired a lawyer and refused to cooperate with any attempts to find Gabby. During those 10 days, Brian and his family acted as if nothing had happened. Neighbors later reported seeing Brian doing yard work and going about his normal routine. On September 6, Brian and his father went on a camping trip to Fort DeSoto Park with Brian's sister Cassie. It was as if Gabby had never existed. Meanwhile, Gabby's family was growing more desperate by the day. They knew their daughter would never just disappear without contact. She had been faithfully checking in throughout the trip, and her sudden silence was completely unlike her. On September 11, 2021, Gabby's mother Nicole Schmidt filed a missing person report with police in Suffolk County, New York. She told officers that she hadn't heard from her daughter since late August and that Brian Laundrie had returned from their trip without her. The case immediately caught the attention of law enforcement and the media. Here was a young woman who had been documenting her travels on social media, and suddenly she had vanished while her fiancé returned home alone and refused to talk. Northport police took over the investigation and immediately named Brian Laundrie as a person of interest. They tried to speak with him, but he and his family continued to remain silent. Their lawyer, Stephen Bertolino, handled all communication and made it clear that Brian would not be cooperating with the investigation. The case began to gain national attention, partly because of Gabby's social media presence. People who had been following her journey were alarmed by her sudden disappearance. The contrast between her happy Instagram posts and her mysterious vanishing captured public attention. On September 14, Gabby's family held a press conference pleading for information. Her father Joe Petito made an emotional appeal directly to Brian and his family. "I'm asking for help from the parents of Brian and I'm asking for the help of the family members and friends of the Laundrie family as well," he said. "Whatever you can do to make sure my daughter comes home, I'm asking for that help. There is nothing else that matters to me now." But the Laundries continued their silence. On September 13, 2021, something else happened that would complicate the case even further. Brian Laundrie left his parents' house, supposedly to go hiking at the Carlton Reserve, a vast wilderness area near their home. His parents later told police they last saw him on September 14, though they didn't report him missing until September 17. The timing was suspicious. Just as law enforcement was closing in and preparing to question Brian more seriously, he vanished into the Florida wilderness. His parents told police that Brian had taken a backpack and gone to the Carlton Reserve, a 25,000-acre area of swamps, trails, and dense vegetation. It was the kind of place where someone could easily disappear, either by choice or by accident. The FBI and local law enforcement immediately began searching for Brian, but the Carlton Reserve presented enormous challenges. Much of the area was underwater due to recent flooding. The terrain was difficult, and the alligator population made the search dangerous for officers. While dozens of law enforcement officers searched for Brian in Florida, another search was taking place on the other side of the country. FBI agents and search teams were combing through the areas in Wyoming where Gabby and Brian had been traveling. On September 19, 2021, searchers made the discovery that Gabby's family had been dreading. Human remains were found in the Spread Creek area of Bridger-Teton National Forest in Wyoming. The location was near where Gabby's van had been spotted in late August. The remains were found in a remote camping area, the kind of place where van life travelers often stop to spend the night away from crowds. It was a beautiful but isolated spot with views of the Teton Mountains. 2 days later, on September 21, the Teton County coroner confirmed that the remains belonged to Gabby Petito. The cause of death was ruled homicide, though officials didn't immediately release details about how she had died. The news devastated Gabby's family and friends. Their worst fears had been confirmed. The young woman who had started this journey with such hope and excitement was gone. With Gabby's death now confirmed as murder, the investigation intensified. On September 23, 2021, federal prosecutors issued an arrest warrant for Brian Laundrie. He was charged with unauthorized use of a debit card, specifically using Gabby's bank card to withdraw money between August 30 and September 1 while he was driving back to Florida. This charge was just a way to legally pursue Brian while investigators built their murder case. The debit card charge carried serious federal penalties and gave law enforcement the authority to arrest Brian if they found him. But Brian was still missing in the Florida wilderness, and the massive search was turning up no signs of him. Hundreds of officers, FBI agents, and volunteers searched the Carlton Reserve day after day. They used helicopters, boats, and specially trained dogs, but Brian seemed to have vanished completely. The case had become a national obsession. People across the country were following every development, sharing theories on social media, and even traveling to Florida to join in the search for Brian. The story had all the elements that capture public attention: a young, attractive couple, social media, a cross-country adventure gone wrong, and a mysterious disappearance. On October 12, 2021, the Teton County coroner released more details about Gabby's death. The autopsy revealed that she had died from strangulation, and her death was ruled a homicide. The coroner estimated that she had been killed 3 to 4 weeks before her body was found, which would place her death around late August. This timeline matched with when Gabby's family had last heard from her and when her social media posts stopped. It also corresponded with when Brian was sending the fake text messages from her phone, trying to make it appear that she was still alive. The strangulation finding was particularly significant because this type of killing typically indicates intimate partner violence. Strangulation is often used by abusers as a way to control their victims, and it can be a sign of escalating domestic violence. On October 20, 2021, after more than a month of searching, there was finally a breakthrough in the hunt for Brian Laundrie. His parents, Chris and Roberta Laundrie, went to the Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park, an area connected to the Carlton Reserve where they said Brian often hiked. The park had been underwater for weeks due to flooding, but the water had recently receded enough to allow searching. Within hours of the Laundrie parents arriving at the park, they found some of Brian's personal belongings. Law enforcement was called to the scene, and a more thorough search revealed human remains along with a backpack and notebook belonging to Brian. The remains were found near a trail that Brian was known to frequent. The discovery ended the massive manhunt that had consumed law enforcement resources for over a month. But it also meant that Brian would never face trial for Gabby's murder. Whatever had happened between him and Gabby in those final days in Wyoming would have to be pieced together through evidence rather than testimony. On November 23, 2021, the medical examiner confirmed that Brian Laundrie had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. He had killed himself, probably within days or weeks of entering the wilderness. But perhaps the most important evidence came from the notebook found with Brian's remains. FBI investigators were able to recover writings from the water-damaged notebook, and what they found provided the final piece of the puzzle. In the notebook, Brian had written a confession taking responsibility for Gabby's death. The exact contents of the confession weren't immediately released to the public, but law enforcement confirmed that Brian had admitted to killing Gabby. Later, more details from the confession would emerge. Brian wrote, "I ended her life. I thought it was merciful." He tried to claim that Gabby had been injured and that he killed her to end her suffering, but investigators and Gabby's family rejected this explanation. The autopsy had shown no evidence of any injury that would support Brian's claim. As the FBI wrapped up their investigation, more details emerged about Brian's actions after Gabby's death. Investigators determined that Brian had used Gabby's debit card and bank accounts to fund his trip back to Florida. He had also sent text messages from her phone to her family, trying to make it seem like she was still alive and traveling. These actions showed that Brian's behavior after Gabby's death was calculated and deliberate. He wasn't acting in panic or confusion, he was actively trying to cover up what he had done and buy himself time to escape. The investigation also revealed that Brian had told his parents about Gabby's death when he returned to Florida, according to a lawsuit filed by Gabby's family. Instead of encouraging him to contact police or cooperate with the search for Gabby, the Laundrie family hired a lawyer and remained silent while Gabby's family desperately searched for answers. On January 21, 2022, the FBI officially closed its investigation into Gabby Petito's murder. Special Agent Michael Schneider released a statement saying that all logical investigative steps had been completed and that no other individuals besides Brian Laundrie were involved in Gabby's death. The case had captured national attention partly because of Gabby's social media presence, but also because it highlighted issues of domestic violence and missing persons cases. Some critics pointed out that Gabby's case received far more media attention than cases involving missing women of color, coining the term missing white woman syndrome to describe this disparity in coverage. Gabby's parents channeled their grief into advocacy, establishing the Gabby Petito Foundation to help other families search for missing loved ones. They also used their platform to draw attention to cases that might not otherwise receive media coverage, particularly those involving marginalized communities. The case also sparked conversations about domestic violence and the warning signs that too often get overlooked. The police body camera footage from Moab became a teaching tool for law enforcement and domestic violence advocates, showing how easily signs of abuse can be misinterpreted or dismissed. Gabby's story serves as a tragic reminder that domestic violence can affect anyone, regardless of age, background, or social media presence. Behind the carefully curated Instagram posts and YouTube videos was a young woman trapped in an increasingly dangerous relationship. Her dream of building a life through travel and social media ended in the remote wilderness of Wyoming, but her story continues to help others recognize the signs of abuse and seek help before it's too late. The beautiful landscapes she shared with her followers became the backdrop for a tragedy that could have been prevented if someone had recognized the warning signs and taken action. Gabby Petito was just 22 years old when her life ended. She had dreams, ambitions, and people who loved her. Her story reminds us that behind every missing person case is a real person with hopes and fears, family and friends who miss them, and a future that was cut tragically short. If this documentary helped you better understand the warning signs of domestic violence, please give it a like to help spread awareness to others who might need to see it. Your engagement helps YouTube share this important story with people who could benefit from recognizing these red flags in their own relationships or those of people they care about. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more true crime documentaries that focus on education, prevention, and honoring victims' memories. We're committed to telling stories that matter and can make a difference. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, help is available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24/7 at 1-800-799-7233. You can also visit the Gabby Petito Foundation website to learn more about their work helping families find missing loved ones. Gabby's story reminds us that domestic violence can happen to anyone, regardless of age, background, or how perfect things might appear on social media. By sharing her story, we honor her memory and hopefully help prevent future tragedies. Thank you for watching, and remember, if you see something, say something. Your awareness could save a life.